Welcome to Everyday Imperfect, where we share ways to blend our faith, as imperfect as it is, into our everyday. We know that there will be times when we have bad days and hard questions, and we want you to know it's okay to have imperfect faith. We have a perfect God. And it may sound a little simplistic, but if your faith needs a little boost today or every day, sit back, crank those AirPods up, and borrow a cup of imperfect faith from us today. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of Everyday Imperfect. I'm so excited because today I have my good friend Candice with me, and I'm going to be asking her some questions about her faith journey. I believe that one of the reasons we have as much of an issue with people's faith and the attacks we have on our faith is because we simply don't know that other people have struggled with the same thing we have. But they're, like the saying goes, there's strength in numbers. And when we realize that we are not the only ones having to face this, you're able to face a lot more because you know that you're not alone. But before we get there, I want to thank everyone who's been able to share on social media the screenshot of you listening to the podcast. I know several of you got to do that this last week. And be sure that you go to Apple Podcast and rate, review, and subscribe so that other people can find us as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Candice Deen, and we've known each other for several years now. Candice and I are kind of, we call ourselves partners in crime with the 30 Below group, which was originally known as the adultish group. It started out the 18 to 25-year-olds, and then we morphed it into the 18 to 30-year-olds because that demographic has grown so big in our church. And we wanted to make sure that they have a place. And now we have a couple that's come alongside of us to help us kind of disciple the 18 to 30-year-olds where they are. And Candice started coming to our church, and you could tell that she was very meek. She wasn't sure of herself at all. And I can tell you, at least from my point of view, that it has been very inspiring to me over the years to see her grow in her faith the way she has, to go from being the person that was afraid to even pray in public to being the person that teaches our 18 to 30-year-olds to pray in public. That to me lets me know that there's something pointed in the right direction in Candice's life. So Candice, welcome to Everyday Imperfect. Now, before we get started into your story, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, all that fun stuff, so that our crowd knows you a little bit better?
Well, obviously, my name is Candice. I am a mom of many. I have birthed two children. One is 25 and one is 12. And I also have 5 bonus kids. And they are ages range from like 20s to 30s. So
awesome.
We have pets. I work full time, and I have my own business on the side. So,
and that business is called
Sunny Grace Designs.
Yes, yes. You can find her on Facebook, by the way. We'll tell you a little bit more about that probably at the end of the show if I can remember. So now that we know a little bit about your background, what was your faith picture growing up? How did faith work into you as a child, even into young teens and adulthood?
Well, I tell our classes, I didn't get the opportunity to go to church. I wasn't raised in church. I do remember, when I was a teenager, I would go, and I remember when I was saved. But yeah, we would go, and when there was special things going on at church, and my friends would ask me to go. But it caused some conflict with my family because my mom was raised different. But eventually, when I got married, we went to churches and just couldn't find my way. Several years, it's not like I didn't know God, but, I was in that mindset then of, well, I don't have to go to church to have a relationship, those things that we tell ourselves.
But could you say that you had a relationship outside of church?
Oh yeah. I definitely had a relationship. I knew he loved me, and I knew he died for me, and I knew that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if he wasn't with me, because I went through.
You knew that even back then.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Now, how was it in your marriage? I mean, was faith a big part of your marriage?
Well, back then, because sadly, I have been married more than one time, but it really wasn't there. We didn't go to church. I know there was a few times that he would try to go to church just to make it look okay that I would stay with him. But anyway, there was just a lot there, and I really wanted to go to church.
Would you go to church and then he would follow, and that's how that would work? Or he would go to church and then
he would
just
take me to the church he grew up in. And, it still wasn't the church that I felt like was home. And I had even went to another church, and he would go with me some there, but I mainly would go by myself. And of course, that pastor had told me, well, if he really loves you, then he'll wait for you. But he didn't. So, it just wasn't the same. I was trying to grow my relationship with the Lord, which was then pulling me away from the things that the Lord knew I didn't need in my life.
Okay. So even, gosh, that would have been, I think we've known each other probably 10 years now.
Yeah.
So even before then, you were starting to realize that there was things in your life that didn't belong. Why do you feel like there were things that you could, I guess, identify that they didn't belong?
Because, knowing the relationship with God that I had, and just feeling like, this is not right. For one, before I married that particular guy, we lived together. And, I knew that wasn't right. And, I would go to church, and, I remember when I was baptized, I really didn't understand at that time. I just knew that, hey, I want to live my life for the Lord, but I got to do things right. And, I knew then, what I did, and went back to live with this guy that I felt a tugging, like this is not right. And this is not where I need to be. And I think that's why we just grew apart. Now, mind you, I did end up marrying him, but it was for the wrong reasons, because I was trying to make it like, Lord, if this is where I'm going to be. I can remember, now this is kind of crazy and getting off subject, but I can remember we had a trampoline in the back, and I remember laying on that trampoline and just looking up to the sky and just begging the Lord, like, if this is not where I'm supposed to be, sorry.
Okay.
If, I said I wasn't going to get emotional today.
Get all emotional. It's fine.
But yeah, if this is not where I'm supposed to be, then make something happen to where I just leave. I just would always try to find reasons to leave.
Hey friend, I just want to let you know about something that I think is pretty special. There's a new way for you to get even more out of being a part of the Everyday Imperfect family. Check the show notes to find out how you can help be a sponsor of the podcast by joining our Patreon group of supporters. There's an added bonus content that you can discover on every level of giving. Would you consider helping us to get this message out to all the other imperfect people just like us?
We had a trampoline in the back, and I remember laying on that trampoline and just looking up to the sky and just begging the Lord, like, if this is not where I'm supposed to be, then make something happen to where I just leave. I just would always try to find reasons to leave. And I don't know. It was just, I felt when I left that very last time that I knew, God had already pretty much put it in my spirit. Like, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there, and I needed to move on.
Wow. And so what brought you back?
Brought me back to him. Just knowing that he protected me from a lot of things in that relationship. For one, as bad as I wanted a kid, I thank God now that I didn't have a kid with that guy, because that would have been really bad. But I'm not going to say that when I left that everything was perfect, because obviously it wasn't. And I spiraled downhill and was really wild. So, I had times where I guess I was trying to fight all of that. And even though I knew God loved me, it's like I was trying to push away. And I went through a season in my life where, I did a lot of stuff that was not right. And it's like I think back now, you kind of don't think about these things till you start talking about it. But even then, I mean, I knew he was right there because, I mean, there's stupid stuff I did that I know he saved me, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be alive today.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those are things that you probably don't see until you're this far removed from them. Right.
Because when I think about it now, it's like, man, I was so dumb. Why did I do some of these things?
Yeah.
But, you have to go through those things to learn. So,
well, you wound up meeting your current husband.
yes.
And you had a long relationship with him
Yes.
before y'all got married.
Mm-hmm.
When y'all first got married, did you incorporate faith then, or was that more of a recent thing?
Not really. I mean, he knew that I love God. We talked about God.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we both have been through things in our life that just, I mean, he was raised in church. He went to church. Him and his ex-wife had went to church with the kids. I mean, there was just a lot there. But it just wasn't, I guess because in the beginning I felt like we were just trying to hide, it was just one of those type things. But as things went on, I mean, obviously I think what really clicked, there was I don't remember exactly the timing or whatever, but I know that we used to go over to his best friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to the best friend. I mean, it was one of those nights where we were all sitting around the fire, talking about things. And yeah, they might have been doing things they, shouldn't have been, but whatever. We were in that moment.
Yeah.
And I was telling him the things that was going on in my life, and some of the things that I felt like was godly, because this man, now he knows the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, he knows everything about the Bible. He can tell you. And
this is the friend you were talking to.
My husband's best friend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we were sitting around the fire, and I was telling him all these things, and he looked at me and he said, God has a plan for your life. Mm-hmm. And he looked at Tim, he said, I don't know if you're going to follow her or whatever, but he said, you need to find you a church.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, and to this day, he probably really I don't even know if he remembers that story.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's the reason why I really started looking for a church. And that's when I can remember putting it on Facebook. And I didn't want to go to the church we're at now because I knew too many people. Like, I wanted to be at a church where nobody knew me, where I could start fresh and really get that relationship, with nobody knowing me and knowing my background.
Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like you were still ashamed of your background.
I was.
Yeah, I hope that you've gotten over that by now.
Oh, yeah. Because I know I had to go through those things to be where I'm at today. Because if I hadn't been through some of the things I've been through, then I couldn't help other people through those things.
Exactly. Yes.
So.
And it takes a lot to get to that point to realize that, I think it was Romans 8:28 where he talks about that he will make all things work to the good of those who love him.
That's right.
And so looking back on things, then you can see that, yeah, he really has made it to the good for you, but going through it,
when you're in that valley, it's hard, because when you're high up on the mountain, you're like, oh yeah, I'm here and it's all great. But then, God is still the same God when you're in the valley.
Yeah.
It's just you don't see it. You just think he's not there for me when he really is.
We just get so distracted by everything else.
All the sideshows.
Yes, the sideshows, girl. So at this point, what I'm thinking of is you were already in church. You were very faithful. And Tim would come every so often, I think probably when you guilted him into it. But what happened in your guys' life to really open his eyes to what was going on in the spiritual realm?
Yeah, so we had an incident where it was just some crazy stuff going on with some people that were going to be moving in next to us. And they were coming on our property. We would try to tell them to get off and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it was a long story short. They said they were going to take care of my husband when he got home. And I mean, I knew what that meant and freaked out. Of course, everybody was wanting to come, and my dad was going to come, and I just imagined this terrible thing happening. But anyway, I was in the house and didn't realize my husband pulled up, and he walked down to where this particular person was, and the guy pulled a gun on him. And he shot the gun. And of course, when my husband heard the first shot, he, of course, immediately fell to the ground, and he saw the next bullet go in front of him, like dancing across the ground.
Wow.
And so at that point, he realized, hey, you know, I need to run. Like, this guy's fixing to kill me.
Yeah.
And so when he got up and he went to go come back to the house, we didn't know until later, because these criminals were recording the whole thing.
Oh, my Lord.
So, of course, they have it on video. And at that moment when the cops got there and everything was going on, they looked at the video. And, of course, the guy tried to say he didn't have a gun, which we knew he did. But they played the video, and the cop told him right then and there, he said, I don't know if you're a church-going man. He said, but I should be putting chalk around you right now. He said, because he pulled the trigger and it jammed.
Oh, my word.
And from that moment, I think that's what kind of clicked for him, that, and he started coming to church. I mean, if he was on call or something like that, he wasn't at church, but he's been at church. And, you know, we know he went through this year of having a hurt back and, you know, not being able to come as much as he wanted to, which he ended up coming back when we were at the ladies' retreat, all on his own.
Yes. So it's been a kind of a roller coaster for sure, but the fact that he was able to just kind of make sure that he was planted in the right place to begin with,
right?
Even before he got hurt later on, and had the back issues, and before all of that mess piled up even further on him, he knew enough to get to the house of God.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you think, besides the police officer telling him, you need to be in church, or you need to thank God? I can't help but think that if it wasn't for his wife praying for him for years, even when she didn't feel like it, that he wouldn't have known where to go.
Because he saw me, you know, and his daughter going to church and doing all the things. And there were many a nights that he didn't even know that he was laying there asleep, and I'd put my hand on his head, like, you know, I'm rubbing his head, but I was praying for him.
Yeah.
And there were times that he didn't know that he might have had some oil on him and he didn't know it, you know?
Exactly, that anointing oil.
But I knew that, you know, like I've told my testimony before, that when you have something worth praying for, then you pray until.
That's right. Pray until.
Even if until.
That's right. So flesh that out a little bit for our listeners who may not have heard that phrase before, even if until.
So even if you don't see that God's working, then you keep praying until something happens.
That's right. That's right. And it really takes a steadfast heart to be able to do that, because I know, especially in your situation, there were times where you would want to pray for your husband the right way.
Yeah. Or I'd want to choke him.
Life would happen.
Right.
And so there would be times that you just felt like you'd had to throw your hands up and just walk away, but you didn't.
Yeah.
What can you describe, was there, during that time before Tim came back to the Lord, was there anything that just really held on to you, whether it was a passage in the Bible or maybe a message from a friend or something that you just held on to during that time?
Well, I know the biggest thing is I just kept remembering that, like we were talking about, the God on the mountain. And I don't know exactly which passage. I think I had told you like one time before, it was Elijah that had to go through so much. But God wasn't done with him, and he had to keep going. Yeah. And I kind of felt like that, knowing that, you know, I had to kind of step back and say, okay, Lord, I see everything that you've brought me through, you know, and I've prayed for this, and here we are. And, you know, in those moments where I would get frustrated and be like, I know that this can happen. I prayed for, you know, I've been praying for him, and I pray for him. When is he going to come to church? Or, you know, like our daughter would be like, Daddy, when are you coming to church? So I just think through that, just knowing that God wasn't done with what he's called us to do. Yeah. And then, because now, I mean, obviously now I look back and, you know, he's working media at church. So, you know, he loves doing that. Yeah. And just being there every Wednesday, every Sunday, you know, when he can, when he's not sick, and doing all the things and wanting to do stuff. I prayed for that, you know, and here we
Exactly.
are. And it's just, you just have to keep going no matter what God takes you through, even when you think, when you don't see him working.
Exactly.
He's working.
Because there's going to come a point that everything will be perfect and you'll never have to pray again, right?
No, that is not the case. Even when you see him working and even when everything seems great, that's when the enemy will try to come in and make you doubt everything.
You know, and that brings us greatly into my next question, which is kind of, well, we'll see if it's the last question, 'cause you know how we are. But, so has doubt entered in since you've believed? And if so, what have you done to effectively kind of keep it in its place or kind of restart yourself a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely always times where doubt, you know, will sneak in and you're thinking, why keep doing this? You know, or, you know, you pray about things and you don't see it happening and then you almost want to give up. And it's like, no, I can't give up because, you know, he died for me on the cross. Like, I can't give up. Like, look what he did for me. You know, these things are little compared to what he's done.
Oh gosh, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So, I mean,
they
it's just
feel
things,
so big at the time.
Yes. I mean, I can just thinking back on, you know, remembering times where I didn't know where our next meal was going to come from.
Yeah.
And then, you know, here comes a check in the mail for whatever reason. It's like, okay, God, thank you.
I
Like, you
remember
knew.
times you weren't expecting things.
Yes.
And a job that you were not expecting just drop into your lap.
Yes. And that's when I know, like, okay, how can I doubt you when you've done so much? But it does happen. I mean, we're human. It's going to happen.
Right. It does. I think a friend of mine, and this is actually in the book that's going to be released soon.
I can't wait.
But it mentions that it is so hard or when you have the worst times of doubt, that's when you need to go back and think about all the things he's done for you before, because it's hard to continue having that level of doubt whenever you replace it with gratitude for what he's done. So it sounds like that's what you were doing, starting back at the beginning.
Yeah, because, I mean, but even here recently, you know, I had went through, I don't even know what kind of season you call that in. I guess because we found out, you know, my father-in-law was having terminal cancer, and I think it just kind of threw me into that, you know, here we are, like, why? Yeah. Like, I didn't understand, and I don't really know what threw me back into that other than that. And because I remember, you know, we had so much going on, and, you know, I was in pain with my back, and we didn't get to come to church a lot. And just in those few weeks, it felt like an eternity that I was about to slide back. Like, I mean, I can remember thinking, you know, oh, I could pick up a cigarette right now, you know, and I knew. And
that was something you had laid down for the Lord years ago.
That's been 3 years ago. And I was like, why did that come in my head? Like, I know good and well that is not what God wants for me.
Right.
Like, why would I even think that? But I think it's just the enemy knew that I was down on my luck, and he was trying to move his way back in to make me do all the things that the Lord had saved me from.
Because don't you know he would push every button?
Yes, he will use all the things, even your family. So, because it was rough.
So you mentioned that time with going through your father-in-law's diagnosis and all that. How did you pull yourself up out of that?
It took a little bit, but it was just, you know, going back to the things that God has brought us through. Like, how can I sit here and wallow in pity when, again, he died on the cross for us? Look at all the things that he had to sacrifice. Why am I crying over here when I need to be rejoicing? Because even though, you know, he is going through what my father-in-law was going through, I mean, that's part of what we have to go through, you know. And no, I don't want him to hurt. I don't want him to go through these things. But you have to know and pray that the Lord has him.
Absolutely.
Because I even asked him, I said, do you know where you're going? So
that's you can talk to him that way.
Yeah. I mean, do you know where you're going? Like, as long as you know where you're going. So, but
I think he, not only does he have your father-in-law, but he also has you and Tim and McKinley and the kids as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a blessing to be able to, like I said, to see how you've come, because I would just imagine if this had happened right after that first ladies conference we went to in Tifton, Georgia.
Yeah.
you would have handled it a whole lot different.
Oh, yeah.
A whole lot different.
A whole lot different.
Mm-hmm.
He might not even be here.
Right. That's true. That's true. Before we sign off, let me just say a couple of things. Just because it's heavy on my heart. Candice had mentioned in the beginning that she had been married before, and I want to just speak some freedom right here, because in no way do we want anybody to feel that we are condemning them because they happen to have been married and or divorced in the past. Because while we believe that, yes, what God has put together, let no man put asunder, we also believe, and mature Christians, I would think, would agree with this, God doesn't put every person together, every couple together.
That's right.
And so we're just going to break that guilt and shame off of that label, because we know what labels do. Mm-hmm. They tether you to something that isn't you. But also, I want to just ask Candice, before we sign off, if someone's going through a hard time, maybe they've turned back to the Lord for the first time in a while, and then life just slaps them in the face. Or maybe they've never really turned away from the Lord. They've been trying to plod along, and they're just having a hard time with their faith and believing. What would you tell them?
Well, the first thing that just came to mind was Job.
Yeah.
Because, I know that, look how long that he had to go through the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds like, oh, well, but you have to think about that. Like, you have to think about, it's not always going to, it's not always going to be easy.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because, and I don't know if Pastor ended up telling us this or I've heard it somewhere else, but, I want to live my life to, live my life like there is a God, instead of living my life like there's not a God, and then find out later that I was wrong.
Right. Which ones is it safer to be wrong about,
Right.
Exactly.
But I know it's hard, because we're human, and we're going to have those doubts, and the enemy's going to try to come and take all that away. So we have to just keep remembering the things that he's done for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just keep remembering, keep that gratitude forefront. And the thing is, even when you don't actually feel the gratitude, just remember.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that, just the act of remembering is something that the enemy doesn't want us to do.
Right.
He wants to keep us so distracted by the sideshows that we can't remember the sacrifice that God made for us and given us his son. And we can't remember the fact that we have a miracle baby that's growing up right in front of us, things like that. But I do want to say I am very grateful that I get to remember my friend Candice as one of my biggest blessings here at the Bridge. We have a good support team, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So thank you for being with us, Miss Candice. And let me just encourage you guys listening in. If you want to contact Candice, she is available on Facebook, Instagram too, or just Facebook?
I have an Instagram. I'm not on there as much, but I do have one.
So where do they search to find you and your design business?
Oh, the design. I thought you meant just me.
Both of them.
But yes, I have Facebook. Obviously, it's Candice Deen, and then my Sunny Grace Designs. I have a group. I have a Facebook page, the business page, but I don't. I have the group, and like I said, I have the Instagram. I have TikTok. I have all of that stuff.
So we can just look for Candice Sunshine Dean and find you in most places.
That's right.
And I will say that I am a sucker for graphic tees, and Candice is my enabler. So, thanks to Sunny Grace Designs.
Working on one now.
So thank you guys for joining us, and thank you that we are able to get together once a week on this podcast platform just to remind ourselves that it's okay to be imperfect together.
Yes.
Because we serve a God who is always perfect for us. So until next time, you guys have a great week. Hey friend, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. Check the show notes for any links and resources we may have mentioned, and please do me a big favor and leave us 5 stars on the podcast platform where you found us. And if you can't give us 5 stars, tell us how we can get those 5 stars. That's how other people can find out about us and the message we're trying to get out. that it's okay for us to be imperfect in our everyday life because we follow Jesus Christ, who is perfect for us. Also, if you'll go to the Buzzsprout link in the show notes, you can leave me fan mail. That's basically where you tell me what you think about the show and make suggestions for upcoming topics. I can't wait to hear from you. Now, please share this imperfect episode with your imperfect friends and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode releasing soon.